Call to order this regular board meeting of August 28th. Roll call. Let the record reflect that Ms. Kirby Gonzalez, Vice President Cruz, and myself are in attendance. Announcements to be discussed in closed session. I actually want to pull these items for the lack of attendance of board members at our meeting tonight. I want to see if I can, I'll make a motion to pull closed session item number 1 and number 2. Can I get a second on that?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
And those items are pulled from the agenda. So there'll be no closed session tonight. Let's do Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll ask Don Stoffer, since you're so vigilant at being at board meetings. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I already declare a roll call, so I won't do that again. Announcements to be discussed. Communication celebrations. Our Superintendent Gilland.
Thank you, President Mackey. Real quickly, a couple celebrations. I want to mention that we're making note of the $59,963 contribution for our grant award from the Central Valley Foundation. You'll remember Julie Hoskins spoke of this last year. This is the first installment. I thought it was worthy of celebration. This will result in about just shy of $600,000 over the next 3 years. So we're very grateful, of course, for Julie's efforts and the support that this group has provided for our English learners. You know, that's been a concern of ours and certainly an area we want to focus more attention, so we're pleased with that. Wanted to recognize that. I also wanted to introduce tonight to you Victoria Visoshin, who will be our new board member from River City High School.
Okay.
We've got
I was like, new board member.
New board, oh, by the way.
We didn't have an election yet.
Our student board member, I should
Okay.
say. And she'll be joining us at the next meeting if she doesn't show up this evening. And we've got a name plaque for her. So we will welcome her when she shows up.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay. The Student Association report, since the student board member has not arrived quite yet, I will skip her. I do not see Deborah Hearn in attendance, so we will then jump to Don Stoffer for WTA report, if he's got anything.
Sorry, I didn't have my little quiet time. Good evening.
Good evening.
First, on behalf of WTA, I'd like to offer our support and encouragement to Jerry Smith, whose home was seriously damaged in the earthquake last weekend, and so I know he's been preoccupied with that. I'd like to say also that the start of the year has been crazy as usual, but I have to say that it's been going rather well, and with all the little problems that always come up with opening a school and new people and new kids, we've been able to work a lot of issues out, and I have to thank both Human Resources and Ed Services for helping out on a number of little small things. We were able to work through them and move on and go beyond. I have to say that tech support hasn't been as good as that, and I know I personally have had 4 tech tickets filed, and I know anywhere I go in the district, I hear more complaints from teachers about tech issues. I mean, I'll just leave it at that. I'm sure you hear them as well. Any case, all in all, a pretty good start to the year. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. That takes us to public comment, which I don't see any blue slips for public comment tonight. Board superintendent comments. I'll start with Superintendent Gilland.
Thank you again. I want to kind of echo what I heard Mr. Stoffer share this evening. We had a great opening. We're real pleased with how things have played out. I think the work of staff in preparation really paid off. We had very good balance of classes. There are some adjustments we're making. Our enrollment looks good. We're over 7,500 kids at this point, so we certainly made our projection. That looks like about 30 to 40 students over last year's enrollment. So again, we feel really good about that. That's a manageable number in the direction we want to head. Back to school nights started last night. I know some of you were there. We do have another round a week from last night, Wednesday night, September 3rd. Bridgeway Island will welcome parents for 6th through 8th grade students. Westfield, Bridgeway Island is 5:30 to 7 o'clock. If you want to take note, Westfield, 5:30 to 6:30, and West Moor Oaks, 6 to 7:30 for our final round of back-to-school nights. And that's all I have to report at this point, other than to thank staff once again for the smooth opening. I think the cabinet did a great job in terms of looking at projection numbers and making sure we had teachers where they needed to be. We had some concerns early on about our kindergarten enrollment, but the students have arrived, if you will. So with very little disruption, we have teachers where they want to be and kids in class. So again, we're off to a great start. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Kirby-Gonzalez.
Okay, no committee updates, but I do want to thank the Washington Teacher Association for the teacher orientation, which I know all of you were also in attendance, and it was just a really wonderful event. Everyone was happy and excited to be hired and be working here, and we are happy to have them. And what I think was really special, coming as the perspective of a board member, was getting to see our new dance teacher, getting to meet our new culinary teacher, and it just felt really good to see board policies of things we do here carrying out in a really positive way, and very excited people to be getting in those classrooms. I also got to attend Riverbank for a student who won free lunch from our booth the other day that we worked, and it was such a nice, welcoming feel. So I just wanted to share that about Riverbank and really thanking them. I was not the only mom with a stroller. There were many, and they have grandparents and parents joining kids in the lunchroom and a special spot set up so that they could have lunch together. And it was very, very welcoming, very positive. Great to see their new cafeteria in action, their new electronic way that they're managing food. I also got to check out, and that was working well. They were happy with that, so that was great. Also, and I want to thank again, our ed services. The teachers continue to come up to me and say thank you for the math professional development. They've been very, very happy, and it just feels good to go out and have people pull you aside and say, I'm so glad about that math training, because that doesn't happen everywhere, and I've had it many, many times. So thank you.
Ms. Cruz.
I, too, attended the teacher orientation, and I was excited to see all the new teachers that were there, and especially to talk to our new culinary teacher. She pulled me aside, and she's excited, so I'm excited for her, and I hope to see a lot of good meals coming out soon. But I'm glad, as Ms. Kirby-Gonzalez said, to see that some of the policies and procedures that we are going through here are being introduced. I also attended Southport Elementary, where the PTO paid $2,500 for a leadership workshop for about 65 of their students. And all I can tell Southport PTO is what great money spent. We had a good time. They broke us up into groups, got to spend a lot of time with the kids. It was, I talked to Dr. Gillian about it, gave him the speaker's name. We played Simon Says, I lost every time. So it was good to do that. And it was interesting because sometimes we don't think that the students, I sat with 6th to 8th graders, and some of those students, you wouldn't think they know what the school board is. And there was a moment where each adult had to say a little story about themselves, what they do. And one of the young men asked me, and it stuck with me very much, asked me, how come none of the school board members talk to the kids and get their opinion about the schools? So that stuck with me, and I hope those parents can tell those kids our information's online, they can reach us, or I tell them, if you see me at Walmart, see me at the snack bar, come by, say hi. This young man said, oh, the paper towel holders are always broken in the bathroom. I was like, wow, he jumped on it. So it was interesting, and I kind of encourage other board members to talk to the kids too and get their opinions, because that's what we're here for. I was excited to talk to that young man. I attended back to school night at River City, and I can't say enough about River City. I'm really impressed with that school. For one, it was clean, it was nice, the attitude of the staff and the students were so positive. I felt so good about being there. I was just sharing with some of the staff, my son's in the engineering academy, and here it is the second week, and he's talking about transistors, and I was like, wow, he's going to be building his own car by the time he's out of high school, which would be good for me, cheap. But I'm really impressed. And I just want to let you guys know tomorrow is the very first football game of the year. So if you guys can come out, and thanks very much.
Thank you. I just have a little bit. I went to the Stonegate back to school night, of course. My daughter's there at first grade. So it was nice to see all the staff come back and ready for the next school year. And I do know that there's plenty of students that have come talk to me, 3 of them in my house. And they talk to me constantly about what's going on at River City and what's not going well and what is going well. So it's difficult to get to some of the kids sometimes, and that we're not connected to that. So just being on campus sometimes helps that and be visible with them. So it's encourageable to go out and to attend school functions and whatnot for that. So that's all I've had for my comments. On to information discussion items. Information regarding potential future facility improvement projects. Superintendent Gilliland.
Yeah, real quickly as introduction, these first 2 items are very closely related. The first item, information regarding potential future facility improvement projects, it stems from our capital investment program document that really identifies the needs throughout the district for the next 10 years or so of capital improvements that we're planning to embark upon. And once the board approved the measure for the bond in November, we decided that we needed to talk to the architectural group and get a sense of where we best start. You know, what makes the most sense strategically to address the overarching needs for the district. So they've provided some information. Scott's going to present that PowerPoint at this point, but I wanted to just make the distinction between this information from our architectural group that will be followed by Scott's presentation about possibilities and discussion, hopefully to facilitate discussion with the board about those things that you would like to make sure we emphasize as we move forward with preparation for the bond measure. Scott.
Good evening. How are you?
Good.
So as soon as this presentation comes up, as Superintendent Gilliland said, the first presentation was put together by MVEI, and it is based on the information that you have already seen. So we figured as we're going through this process, and we asked them to put together a summary so we could refresh some of the stuff that has been discussed over the past 3, 4, 5 months relating to facility improvements and a potential bond. So just very briefly in summary, I'm not going to read the slides verbatim, but we had a survey that showed a 67.8 and a 67% support for a bond. They did 2 different tests, if you recall, in that survey. And the data from that survey listed a series of things that tested well with voters, having to do from dry rot to replacing leaky roofs and windows, ADA accessibility, heating and air conditioning systems, et cetera. And the tax rates based on the information that we gleaned, we could support about a 39 per $100,000 assessed value threshold. And that is on assessed value, not market value. And the data then suggested that we should really consider November 2014 bond initiative. From there, as we continued to have conversations and we said, okay, you have a capital investment program that has some $215 million worth of improvements to be done over 10 years. One bond measure is not going to be able to address everything, so we need to start honing down what those priorities should be. And in that conversation, we asked the architectural firm, what do you see as being some of the top priority things? And so the second slide is identical to the first slide, except we have highlighted the things that the architectural firm has said they think these things are the things that should be addressed first in their purview. And then we cross that with information that we received from the community input team, where they talked about the safe, warm, and dry standard as far as one of the basic standards that we should be looking at in a bond program, and that is security fencing and emergency exit gates and doors. So some of the things we've talked about is the culinary program, CTE, and what a kitchen might look like. And so these are just some graphical representations of what a demonstration or a teaching kitchen could look like depending on how the program is put together. Here is some exhibition cafe-style kitchens. There's a whole bunch of variety of ways that you can do it. If you were to look at the kitchen at River City, it is considered a cafe-style kitchen because of the way the kids come in and walk through and the way it's set up, so it's kind of following that model. They also had some ideas on building envelope and modernization of building envelope. Might be a little bit hard to see in this picture. As you look at this, you go, okay, so they changed some painting and stuff like that. But I think one of the things that's hard to pull out is they replaced the windows. And so they can replace the windows and maintain the original look and feel of the building. And again, here's some more window replacement where they go through and they pull out the old wood frame single pane and they go to either a plastic or metal frame or a storefront type, which is a double pane, and you get the energy savings from that. We had a lot of conversations about ADA accessibility and compliance, and here is a very interesting set of pictures that shows a ramp that wasn't there before, and if that was a path of travel for students, it'd be really interesting to see how somebody that had a handicap would get down that path of travel without that concrete planter there. And so those are some of the things that they think we could address and what those things could look like. Mechanical improvements and roof retrofits. The picture on the bottom right looks a lot like the Westmore Oaks roof before we replaced it this summer. So interesting to see that other school districts have that same challenge. And another thing that we'll address that isn't necessarily facility money in building things is if you look at that picture, it might be a little bit hard to see on the slide here, but in your hand, you'll see that there's a lot of pine needles and stuff on top of the roof because of the location of the tree to the building. And so we're also assessing where trees are planted in relation to a building versus, to create shade versus creating long-term damage to the roof. So that's something that we're keeping an eye on as well. Excuse me. 21st century learning environments, some different thoughts and ideas on how 21st century learning environments might look, from collaboration rooms to group rooms to open lab environments, and excuse me, library and media centers, and having innovation labs and, again, collaborative common areas. So these are just some visuals of the things that you might see as you go through and prioritize in this program. So if we can pull up the second presentation, if you're okay, we'll just go right into the two of them. So the second presentation is really just looking and reminding of the things that we have done in the past and the things that we can do in the future. We think it's really important to remember that out of Fund 25, even though we haven't had a bond since the last bond was passed in 1990 or 2006 for the high school, we have done quite a bit of work. We've done, thank you very much. We've done two solar projects. We did an $11 million modernization at Riverbank over two different programs. We've done entry gate work. We've done re-roofing work. So I think it's very important that we make sure we recognize that in the interim period and in an economic downturn, the district continue to access and maximize funding to continue to do facility projects. Currently, we still have projects that are underway regardless of the status of a bond. We're doing some ADA bathrooms at the Bright campus. We've got some mechanical upgrades happening at River City High School. We're starting the district office remodeling, the planning of that, the CTE program for Bright. You should be getting an architectural contract on that at our next board meeting. And then we're looking at the ERP program. We're going to get some funding from ERP. We'll get a $1.5 million this month and about another $2 to $3 million in future months. Some of that money will be able to divert. Some of it will help us augment and do some of the projects that were slated in 2008. And then the energy efficiency funding money that we're going to get, plus the Phase 3 solar project with Chevron Energy Solutions, and you'll get more on that in the next 30 days as well. We met with them again today. And then just a reminder on the prior bond issuances, the last two were Measure R in 1999, Measure Q in 2004, and Measure Q in 2004 was the one that funded River City High School, and the 1999 Measure R helped with Stonegate and did some modernization work. All in all, with those two measures, there are $69 million of local funds leveraged by other funds the district have to create $89 million worth of improvements in local investment. So the priority suggestions, what we've done here is we've just taken information from the other sources that we had. We looked at what the architectural firm gave to us. And then we went back to that community input team. We said, what was a priority for them? Because they had three very specific areas. And all we've done here is put it onto a single slide for you so that you have all that information in front of you, and then give you the opportunity to have a conversation about it and provide some direction as we start putting that bond program together and deciding where we go with it, to get input from the board on where you think the priority should take place. And that leads you to a discussion, and I can go backwards. We can leave that up there if we'd like to. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Landsberger. Ms. Kirby-Gonzalez, do you have any questions for Mr. Landsberger or comments?
That's a lot of information.
What's that? I have a question, and is this something that could come back at our next meeting as well, after we regurgitate some of this information, or let it absorb into our brain as far as what we want to see and do? And
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think it's a good idea for us to continue to bring this back to you, and you continue to have the discussion. And as you're looking at different things and you get new information, you hear about stuff, again, that CIP as an organic document, will change it as the needs change. And I think this bond program, until you get up to actually issuing bonds and stuff, if we get that far, you have the ability to move those priorities around based on what you're seeing. So ongoing conversation.
Okay, because for me, the public is going to want, and they always have, right? What do you want this money for? They like to see, what do you want the money for? And then they like to see it come to fruition through a committee that, oversight committee, which I know we're going to have.
Yep.
But they want to see it. We asked for A, B, and C, and we gave you A, B, and C. And they like to see that in most communities and most times with bonds and tax dollars, even with cities or municipalities. They want to see exactly what you gave them, and they want to see, did you give us A, did you give us B, and did you give us C? So with that said, with some of these things that we're talking about and we'll continue to discuss, will there be a concrete, definite answer of here's what we're going to provide with the money we're asking for, and then providing that? And if so, what time frame are we talking about making that happen from the board level as far as deciding what those things are?
We had two questions. I think the first question was, is there going to be an accountability measure that we bring back to the board and or sunshine to the public that says, you asked for A, B, and C, here's how we gave you A, B, and C? Answer to that is yes. I think it comes through that bond advisory committee and through minutes, and then if the board so chooses, you could have that group come back and give you a report to show you, on a quarterly or semi-annual basis where the money went and how it fit into the priorities of the program. So I think that's how you can get the accountability measure out to the public. As far as the second question, which was how long do you have to make these decisions, I think you start the priority, let's start the conversation now. I think we have it over the next three meetings. And then at one point we'll ask and go, when do we really need to have some type of definitive statement? I think it's in the argument for message already talks about some of the most important things. And so as you look at that, you're going to be able to pull your priorities out of that and decide out of these things, which one do you want to do? Because they're all very important.
Right.
And the issues becomes, you put them in a priority order because you're not going to get through the entire list in one bond issuance. It's going to take more than one. So I think you have a few meetings before you have to have something very definitive.
Right, because for me, it's I think really important to really define exactly what it is we're going to do. Is it redoing the windows? Is it fire safety? It's really easy with a high school, right? When you're passing a bond for a high school, you're saying we want X money to build a new school.
Sure.
You get that money, you build a school. People see, oh, you built a school. We like that. We got what we wanted. We got what we paid for. With this one's a little more tricky for me because we have a specific dollar amount and we have to define what it is we're going to use that money for. And for me, my personal opinion is we do work on the next 2-3 meetings. I'm guessing the quicker the better at really defining what that is. I know we have a CIP document, and that's really, really beneficial for long-term growth and what we do with the money coming into our district for Fund 25 and further bond issuances we do in the either long-term future or near future. But for us going into this bond, I think we really need to define what that is. What is A, what is B, and what is C? And I think we're close. I'm not saying we're way off base. I think we're close, but I want to know, because when we talk about it as a board going out to talk about the bond, they're going to say, well, what do you want the money for? It's up to us to really be able to articulate what it is we want to do with that money. So.
And then I think that's exactly what the discussion is for, and that's what it should enable you to do. Another thing to remember too is as you put this list together, you come up with an A list and a B list, knowing that in the A list, that's the stuff that we're almost positive we can fit within the budget,
right.
And then the B list is the other things you'll get to as far as you can, so that you spend all of the bond money. You don't want to make the A list so overarching that your bond money can't do all those things, because then you haven't delivered. So, and we'll work through that with you as well.
Okay. I'll move it to Ms. Kirby-Gonzalez.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate this too. So one piece that is very compelling to me is somebody who's working in a classroom right now whose students are asking to go to the nurse's office because it's too hot. The windows are single pane. It's not a healthy, good, conducive place for learning. So I think that's the first thing for me, is that the rooms are comfortable for students, they're safe for students. Is absolutely for me the first priority. I think that we definitely need to have it tied down what we want. However, I would say we tie down like the A list, 75%, or we come up with a percentage, and then give some flexibility, because as I look at these, some of the things like computer labs already in the last few years have completely changed what people are doing. They're not having labs, or they're having maybe a media center, but a lot of times they're bringing the technology into the room. And so I think that while yes, we absolutely need to really have some things that we're strong with to tell the public, I think we need to allow for a little bit of flexibility too, and be cognizant that there will be things that may change there. I also think that there's stakeholders, obviously, that need to, that you've met with, but then, of course, that need to be continued in this conversation. The people at the sites understand a site better than we do sitting up here often. They live on that site. They know what works. And I've seen bonds where they've changed things around it, and it doesn't work well for the people who are there. So we just want to make sure that that conversation for me is very open with each school site, with the principals, with the staffs, with the families, is important for me. But I appreciate this. And so while the classrooms is a huge one for me, I think the safety as well, and I'm happy to see it, the emergency exit, gates and doors. It's a seemingly small thing, but it's a important thing for people. And I know when I was at Bridgeway, and I've said this before, and I got locked in by the chain link fence and I couldn't get out, and I thought, oh, I really would like to have an emergency gate here. So thank you.
Ms. Cruz?
I pretty much am going to echo what my fellow board members said. I think it's a good start to our priority list. I think it needs to become a little bit more narrower, so we can go into the public and say this is what we're going to do. And I know this is a priority list that we're working on from the opinion for the bond, but it's my hope, regardless of how the bond goes, that we still work on some of these items as a priority list. And it's part of our job and the district's job that we do provide a safe place for our students to go to school. So I think this is a good start. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to continue on my discussion. I talked a little bit how it would all play out, but for me, continuing the discussion of what the kinds of things I would like to see. The list is really good. I think we've fettered this out probably for a long time now. I think we've been talking bond for, I think since I've been elected, about go out for a bond and what we would do. And I think we've spent the last 4 years really defining that and filtering through the things that the district wants, having parent advisory groups come through and talk about the things that they want to see in classrooms. And I think all this list reflects a lot of those things. So I want to see a lot of that going forward. And I do agree with Ms. Cruz that we kind of need to narrow it down. Like I said, I think it's really important to really define to the public what it is we're going to do. At the same time, allowing some flexibility to maneuver inside those things. If a priority is doing career tech and Wi-Fi in classrooms and things of that nature, we're going to tell the public we're going to give them X, but then give some flexibility in there to, okay, we want this system as opposed to this system. This system's not working out. We need to change to a different system. And that's what our parent advisory group would then play with when we get down that road. So giving them the flexibility to make changes as we go, I think is important. But I think having the overarching things that we're really going to achieve in our classrooms is very important. I think the windows are there, the safety, the gates, and those things I think we've been talking about for a long time, especially in this day and age when we're talking about safety in schools and people entering our schools that don't need to be in our schools. So a lot of those things are very important. I know we just made the changes in our schools. Parents have to stay behind a red line now at a lot of our schools, and I know that's causing a lot of angst with our parents. So a lot of these gates and different things I think would make them feel more at ease and why we're doing some of the things we're doing for the safety of their own children when they're at our schools is very important. I also, I don't see it on here, and this is a lot of information in front of us. That's why I wanted further meetings. But I wanted to talk more about CTE going forward and what we're going to do. I know we talked about or you talked about mainly the culinary and things of that nature, but also looking at what that entails, what portion of the money would go to the CTE, and looking at different things like nursing programs, auto mechanic programs, or whatever the programs are best for our students moving forward, and getting back some of those things. I know my son talked with me about it, I think it was a couple weeks ago. He's like, why don't we have auto mechanic class? I would love to work on a car, and why don't we have that? He sat there for 5 minutes asking me point blank, why don't we have something? And I applaud him for that, because he's like, why don't we have that? And somebody has to explain it, and who better than a board member explaining why we don't have something? The easy answer was it's very expensive to put something like that in place, to start from scratch and really build something like that up. But I think that we need to kick that around and discuss maybe the possibilities of doing something like that in the future. So having more discussions in the next couple of meetings would I think be best. I also want to talk about the CTE program and some of the benefits that it would provide our city as a whole. If we created a CTE program at the Bright School, we could then look at doing some night classes with some of the community as far as giving them some adult education for job training, for different things. I know we've always talked about a lot of the stuff in our public as far as the unemployment rate of West Sacramento, and if we can really use that to benefit not only the students going to our CTE programs, but also the community members over in the Bright areas for adult ed, as far as job, mechanics or HVAC or different things that we could provide through a community-based and working with the city. I think that would benefit not only our school, but then the community at large going forward. So I think that's something that we need to discuss, and it's probably also something that could go on to a 2x2 committee with the city. I think that would be a great discussion to have if we really did work together to provide that kind of a CTE/adult ed to possibly help some of the adults gain jobs and help our unemployment rate in our city. So with all that going forward, I know that was a lot, and I'm sure I saw you writing a lot of stuff down, and I'm sure we'll have more discussions. I'm hoping this will go out to the remaining 2 board members, and we'll get more information from them. Hopefully, please reach out to them and find out what information they can give us before the meeting so that you guys can prepare for that better discussion, I suppose. Superintendent Gillen?
Thank you, Mr. Mackey. I just want to say this is exactly what we were hoping for, just to start the conversation, and you gave us some very specific detail, actually. We kind of fleshed out a few things, and I get the idea that we want to identify specifically or explicitly several things that we're looking to accomplish, but then we also want some flexibility. Tonight, the architectural rendition that you received was really intended to be just conceptual, to trigger some conversation. And once we define that a little bit further, I think it's important to point out as a next step in this process, they will do some actual 3D renderings and some actual, more detailed drawings of what we envision based on the board's direction. And then we'll start community meetings, and we'll get that word out so the community will know exactly what we're thinking about and what the board's direction has been. So I think it's going to happen naturally. That's really the intent. The other thing I wanted to say, just in terms of your comments, Mr. Mackey, about adult ed and partnering that with the CTE program, that discussion's actually been underway. So that's exactly what we're seeing too. Through the grant for, and really a reconfiguration through the Los Rios College District for adult ed programs in our consortia, there's been a lot of discussion about how we can kind of parlay our resources and make sure that there's less redundancy and we're more strategic in how we provide those services. So we see that connection, and I'm glad you mentioned that. So thank you. We'll come back next time. I think we'll probably move up some CTE discussions earlier than originally scheduled. for discussion and continue this dialogue with the other board members as well.
Okay,
Thanks.
and I encourage other board members to continue to look over the documents and then give them more information if you want to see something more from the staff. Because I know I'm gonna look it over more. It's when you're sitting back at home, you're really be able to just look through it and think about things. It's a much different process than sitting on a board dais and having to shoot from the hip sometimes. So I appreciate your presentation from both of them. So I appreciate the hard work you do as far as the projects that we have done in the past. I know it's a lot. Seeing that list was a great thing to see. I know we do a lot of things in our district, so thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, that takes care of information and discussion items. That moves us on to action items. Approve agreement between Los Rios Community College District CCD and USD for AB 86 Adult Ed Planning Grant. Is there any discussion from the board? Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's 3 ayes and no noes. That brings us to number 2, AB 1200, disclosure of the assistant superintendent salary enhancement. 2, 3, 4, and 5, I think, are all kind of interlocked together as far as the raises for assistant supes and superintendent. Do I have a motion for number 2?
First, a quick discussion caveat. I have said since I first was elected to the board, raises have come up and we've said, no, Prop 30 money just came through and this is not the time for it. We need to first get our money in the classroom. We need to first look at what we're doing, what the people who have approved Prop 30 want. And I think that we've done a good job with that. We made sure that, of course, there's still more programs to be brought back. But I think we've done a good job. I can feel good about knowing that we have used the money that we've had very wisely, done a lot of good things with it. And then we were able to give a salary enhancement to the classified and certified staffs, and that was done later. And I feel that at this point, I've said, no, it's not the time, no, it's not the time, no, it's not the time. And I feel like now is a fair time that we're at a place where we have stayed true to our commitment to put the money in other places. When you look around at the region, our salaries are lower than they are in other places. And I think that for me, it's not something that I was excited to do. Nobody's ever excited to talk about administrative raises, but I think that it's, I feel comfortable knowing that it's time for that, and I feel like that's fair. And when you look at what's happening everywhere else, they gave them a long time ago, and we said no for quite a while. But I would give a caveat that if I, for a motion to approve, this is retroactive for the full last school year, and I would make a motion that it's retroactive only until the first of the year. So to give the salary enhancement, but have it be retroactive to January 1. So I make a motion, unless there's any other discussion, to approve the action items, if you want them together, 2, 3, 4, and 5, with the salary enhancement retroactive to January 1.
Is there any further discussion or second?
I actually would like to keep them separate.
No,
Okay.
we'll vote on them separate.
Okay.
But she can make the caveat, the January 1st caveat is to all of them? Okay, I'll make that when it comes clear. You have any further discussion or a second?
No.
No second? Okay. Number 2 dies. You have a motion on the table for number 3. Can you make that motion again for me?
I'll make a motion to approve action item number 3, again, retroactive to January 1.
Can I get a second?
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor say aye.
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 And I vote no. So it's 2 ayes and 1 no. Motion does not carry. Number 4.
I make a motion to actually disclose.
Number 4.
You know, now that I'm looking at this, can you clarify, this is salary schedule and this is disclosure?
Angela or Superintendent Gillen, can you clarify the differences between 2, 3, 4, and 5?
I'm sorry, the question, Mr. Mackey?
Clarify the differences between all of these.
Yes, specifically to my situation, number 4 was revised, excuse me, Number 5 is a ratification for my contract based on the requested salary increase. The other item was AB 1200 form, a disclosure form that is necessary based on any action taken. So it's 2 separate actions, but they're related.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve action item number 4 with the retroactive to January 1.
I have a second. No second. That motion does not carry. Number 5.
I'll make a motion to approve action item number 5 with the retroactive to January 1.
Can I get a second? No second. That motion does not carry. That takes us on to consent items. Can I get a motion to approve consent items?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent items.
I'll second that motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. Future agenda items. Do we have any future agenda items? Ms. Kirby Gonzalez or Ms. Cruz?
I would like to see on our yearly schedule that we have for items coming up that we have overflow towards the end of the year on that, end of the school year, so that we can, on a regular basis every year,
Check it before.
get an idea of overflow numbers before it comes out.
Can we add that, Superintendent Gillen, to those yearly reports to the board? Does that something has to be coming to the board meeting, or can it be just update to the board via email, superintendent update? Or do you want to think about that and get back to superintendent?
As long as it's on the paper and we get it, I'm good.
And then you can decide whether it goes on? Okay. So some kind of information to the board as far as what the overflow, and hopefully you can work with Superintendent Gillen, but exactly what you're looking at and what we're thinking of getting. But I'm guessing something like what the projections
Exactly.
are looking like. Are we going to have overflow problems like we did at Bridgeway, or are we not? Are we all good? I know some of those things you don't know until, because I know I can channel Scott right now by saying we don't know until the school year starts, because until we see the people coming in. I think what she's looking for is something we can see a little bit coming forward. If there's a lot of 5th graders, there's going to be a lot of 6th graders, and then what we can do with that. So
Before parents are notified. That
Right.
would be nice, just at that point.
I'm clear on that. We'll have that discussion. It will be ongoing. There will be changes, of course, because we're not going to necessarily make the final decision until it's time, you know, and we take care of transfers and such. But we can certainly have some dialogue late in the spring, you know, before we make those decisions, certainly.
Okay, excellent.
And also I would like to, if we could, I asked for this last time too, this could be done through email, it doesn't have to be done here, but to have a copy of the tech budget.
Is that something that can go out to the board, Superintendent Gillen? Yeah, okay. Okay, so a tech report as far as what, expenses?
Yes.
Sorry, didn't hear that. Okay. Okay, Ms. Cruz, done? Then one that I wanted, a future agenda item, I know we had some discussion about the gardens at Bridgeway Island, or sorry, at Stonegate Elementary. I know we kind of kicked that back to go back to the schools and go through the process. I'm guessing there's some conversations already.
We've had discussions, and we're moving forward with that.
Okay, so my future agenda item is probably going to be that. I'll speak with you more about putting that on the agenda, hopefully in the coming meetings. And I think that's it. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor to adjourn, say aye.
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 Aye. Those 3 ayes and no nos. Thank you very much.